Hi, my name is Joe and I run games. And the game that we're running today is Draw Steel. This is the campaign diary for my Draw Steel game entitled A Study in Effluence. This is probably maximally affluent today. Anyway, if you saw the last one, you know where we're going with this one. We had just split the party. Good idea. Always a good idea. They had run off in two separate directions in pursuit of rot zombies, trailing ghosts, who had been released from Sister Cavino's basement just south of the fort. I think that's about all the setup you need to begin our study in Effluence. Alright, so Vanish is all by himself. He's running through this populated area, which is just outside the Colosseum district. It would be nice if this were a sparse evening with very few people out, but in fact, there is a public debate happening at the Colosseum. I'm really sad the PCs never got to figure out what was going on at the Colosseum, but there was like this debate happening between Cato Frevius, the famous philosopher and brawler, and his cousin Portia Frevius, who's like a public organizer, and it was a debate about stoicism versus actionable ethics, which, you know, it's a laugh riot. Anyway, Vanish is in pursuit of two zombies, one of which is trailing a ghost, and I gotta tell you, Vanish taking out two zombies is pretty fast. These zombies, and the zombie and the ghost on this side, not a lot of death energy here, so the merging of those two bad guys has not happened yet. They are not yet one enemy. They are still two separate enemies. So Vanish charges in and just blah-pow takes out both the zombies very quickly. And uses contact spirits so that he can talk to the ghost, because Vanish is a medium. That's his complication. Because he's a revenant, and most revenants can speak to and interact with the dead. If you're reading my fiction, revenants can just talk to the dead. But I'm not going to give them an entire complication just for free. The ability to talk to the dead is the good thing about being a medium. So otherwise, Vanish would just be able to see the dead and not communicate with them, which is cool. So Vanish, when you use communicate with spirits, you basically get like 3 questions that you can ask them, assuming it goes well. And so Vanish says, "Why are you doing this?" And the ghost of this young man says, "When I died, there was nothing. There were no gods waiting for me. There was only this." Oh, that's harrowing. And so then Vanish says, what can I do to help you? And he says, "Hold still." And then lashes both arms into Vanish. Because Vanish may have killed both of the zombies, but he did bring a very convenient dead body. His own. So the ghost is trying to get in there and control Vanish's body. We have a clash of wills here, and essentially Vanish throws the whole weight of... I think he rolled intuition on this. And the idea was he's kind of acting by reflex, right? He's already taken control of this body once. So it's easy for him to keep hold of it. And it was a pretty good roll. Vanish rolled really well. I think I rolled like a 3 or something. It was embarrassingly bad. So the ghost is mad. It uses its villain action called Spirited Away to cause Vanish to levitate, and I rolled exceptionally well. So Vanish is levitating until the end of the encounter, just going up, 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 like Charlie Buckets. I think at one point in time, my wife said, "Oh, I know this one, just burp." It did not work. Basically, the ghost fled while Vanish was trying to sort that out. In a last-ditch effort to try to do something to the ghost, he hit it with a vengeance mark and then blew up that vengeance mark. It did do some damage to the ghost, but like not nearly enough. Ghosts have a lot of stamina. I think ghosts have so much stamina because like they don't, they're dead, so like they're not going to get tired. The ghost gets away. Vanish falls. Did some roof running, and I think it became clear in that moment that what had happened is the ghost had sort of gone into an amphitheater, but then just left because there are no, like, it needs dead bodies to latch onto, and there weren't any handy. So Vanish is like, all right, I gotta go catch up with, oh no, I just lost my vengeance mark on Sister Cavino. So he runs off to reset his vengeance mark on Sister Cavino, and not to spoil the ending, but she doesn't know that there's no more vengeance mark on her. She doesn't know there's a vengeance mark on her in the first place. So he rushes over to her place, and she's literally just doing the same thing that she'd been doing. She's just tending to a patient. She's put up some tarps to, block the holes in her basement. And then literally he just pokes in there and is like, and then runs off. What a weird guy. Meanwhile, back at the cemetery, Titus, Marta, and Corinne Vanya have come upon 3 zombies trying to wrench open the cemetery gates as 2 other zombies hold back and watch. Now the PCs don't know this, but the other 2 zombies are holding back and watching because they have finished the sort of merger with the zombies here, and they literally can't touch the gates. The gates, quick aside, cemeteries in this setting often have silvered gates and silvered walls and water features and things like that to keep spiritual energies from crossing the gates. They often have little sigils or rune work to prevent people, spiritual entities, from moving about freely. Sometimes headstones contain similar sigil work to keep the dead in the grave. This isn't necessarily the intention of the living. Who knows where this tradition comes from? But in part, this keeps the ghosts in most of the time. I'm sure there are ways they can get out. But more importantly, this keeps other things out. So it keeps the ghosts safe from the scary stuff that prowls the ideological world looking for things to eat like ghosts. So it's a little bit like a city wall, but for ghosts. Very normal thing to have in a cemetery here. This one has it. All right, back to the story. So Marta jumps into the fray and surrounds herself with zombies, specifically the zombies by the gate. She takes out 2 who are attempting to wrench the gate. The third one manages to finish prying the gate open, but has no action left to do anything with that. Titus, meanwhile, charges the 2 zombies who are behind the gate. He can't see the ghosts, so he rolls in there with his halberd and stabs them both, thinking, all right, these are zombies. And he does plenty of damage to kill a zombie. I think they each take like 9 damage or something. That would definitely kill a rot zombie, a pair of rot zombies. But it does not kill these rot zombies. What in fact happens is one of the rot zombies that he is about to stab kind of like leans to the side, and the tip of his halberd goes right in between his ribs, and then he just snaps right back upward. And then this sickly old man's ghastly face sort of comes out of the center of this zombie's throat, and an arm just reaches out and grabs hold of Titus and pulls, and does pretty huge amounts of cold damage. Ghosts do a lot of cold damage. So automatically, Titus is in a bad spot. That's going to be a theme for the rest of this session. At which point in time, we break for food. I'm not going to do a whole recipe video for you again, but I will say, I went to Aldi and got a bunch of stuff to make flatbreads. That was super cheap, super delicious, strongly recommend. If you got a lot of gamers to feed, it was like $15. Great idea. We had 3 whole flatbreads. Do that. Okay, Marta casually crushes the 3 stamina left in the only existing rot zombie, so that's not hard. And then hurls herself at the other 2 zombies, like, what is going on? Why has Titus not dropped these zombies yet? So now Titus and Marta, both in the fray. Corinne / Vanya is still holding off. I will say, I say that phrase a lot. That's because they are playing a talent, specifically a chronopath. And it really behooves the chronopath to go last most of the time. There are times when they should go first. They should generally be going first or last, right? And so very often what's going on is they're hanging back, waiting for the PCs to make a bad roll, or for me to make a good roll so they can drop it again, or they can, they can grab onto someone and like make them repeat a particularly good action. This happens all the time. So it's not that the player is indecisive. It's that is a tactically advantageous play style. So Marta rushes in and shoves the zombie with the young woman attached to it across the battlefield, and the zombie with the old man in it makes a break for the open cemetery. And the thing about ghosts is they can squeeze out a ton of movement. I think this is probably intentional. Nothing really stops a ghost from moving, right? They should be able to go where they want. So there's 2 ways they do this, for those of you running ghosts. One is they have a pretty decent base speed. Their base speed is 6. It's pretty good. It contains fly and hover keywords. They have a maneuver called Haunt, where they, or an ally with the phasing trait, can shift up to their speed. And for 2 additional malice, they can choose 1 additional target. Well, in this case, what happened is he gets over there. The other ghost uses Haunt. She busts off the board, just gets out of there. She doesn't want to fight these people. He uses the Haunt trait to get into the cemetery. Once he's in there, he uses his speed to get over amid the headstones. And I described as he reaches his arms out, significantly longer than his arms should go, and is just sort of grazing the tops of many headstones, right, and drawing the energy of death into his body. At which point in time, he is struck by several invisible forces. Slam, 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 that the PCs cannot see. And then uses his own haunt ability to run the hell back out of the cemetery, looking fucking terrified. Oh, this was a bad idea. The woman ghost is getting away, and so Titus follows. We're splitting the party. Again. There's 3 parties now. Anyway, the scared old man rushes Corinne aside. If you could see the number of ways I have spelled Corinne over the course of one document, there's at least 4. The scared old man rushes Corinne. She blasts him but good with an entropic bolt, and then Marta catches up and gives him a solid push into the wall of the fort, but then next round gives him an even more solid push into the wall of the fort. He was supposed to move 5 squares. He moved 0 squares. So he took heaps of damage and was essentially plastered into the wall of the fort. I described the zombie as sort of hitting the wall and then merging with it, like merging into the wall like fungus, and just hanging there limply, while the ghost of the man was sort of left behind with a hole in him that he got to look at before he sort of fell into a harrowing, and it's just woo. That's how ghosts work in my world. Sometimes you kill them, and they don't, like, die. They're ghosts. But they don't necessarily come back either. They sort of fall into a stuporous state, and if they don't have enough clarity of thought, maybe they don't come back. That doesn't mean they get to go away. That just means they're stuck in this sort of terrible limbo-like hell for a long time. Fun fact, Marta was 1 square short of destroying that square of wall. So it definitely left cracks in the wall that I'm sure someone will notice. Maybe she'll get a bill. It was a neat conclusion to the scene. At which point, Vanish shows up. And Vanish gets a very different description of the cemetery than everybody else. Because he sees not only the cemetery, but the ghostly version of it that exists inside. He sees that inside the cemetery walls, there's like a smaller version of the fort that appears to be made out of many of the same materials, and is just like a smaller little ghostly construction inside the cemetery walls. He also sees 3 ghosts, maybe soldiers. It's kind of hard to tell because ghosts don't tend to have clothing, but some of them do, right? Some of them died in their uniforms, and so little bits and pieces of them might stick around. So he sees 3 former soldiers guarding the gate, and like 6 to 10 more guarding the rows down there. This is clearly what happened to the ghost of the old man. And so Vanish walks up to them, and he uses contact spirits again and says, "Do you want to come out?" And the center guard is like, "No, but we would be obliged if you could put the gate back where it belongs. There's a hole." So Vanish and Marta creak the gate back into position and get it more or less locked in place, at which point the guards give Vanish a little salute and say, "Who are you?" Right? I mean, this dude just showed up, talked to them, and then helped them out. This doesn't happen to them. They're ghosts. And Vanish gives them his real name, which I still don't know. We'll know by next session. It's something Spanish, I think? Like Renaissance Spanish? Ooh, he could be Gaspar. That's a great name. Anyway, they rush off after Titus. Meanwhile, back on the main strip, things are going as you might expect for like a 10:30 on the main strip. There are drunken revelers out having a good time. There's been people milling around on the boardwalk. You got sex workers out still and their clients. You've got a street preacher out doing that thing. You have vendors selling food and entertainment and maybe barf bags. I don't know what they sell. All kinds of stuff going on. There's a stable across the way where a couple of horses are parked. We are about 2 stores or 2 stalls down from Marta's shop, and a zombie trailing a ghost walks out of the alleyway, and Titus comes screaming down the center street, and he says, "Everybody get away from the zombie," which is an excellent way to calm a crowd. So I'm like, all right, well, we're going to make a presence roll. Titus has an okay presence. Titus rolls 2 ones. The crowd goes wild. People are moving in all directions. There's basically a riot happening. Basically a riot happening while this zombie is storming into the street. It manages to get a hold of the town drunk and kill him instantaneously almost. You know, you gotta bear in mind, like, your average drunken commoner's got, 3 stamina. He squishes that guy but good, freezes his throat with his cold touch, and then hits him with death breath and drops him to the ground, waiting for him to rise as a rot zombie, which he does. So it's chaos for a few rounds. And of course, over the course of those rounds, Titus gets absolutely rocked. He does the double halberd thing again, basically killing that rot zombie before it even has a chance to get up. Post-editing, Joe here, I just wanted to point out that this is the chunk that gives us my very favorite quote of the entire night, when one of the PCs points to a little sort of plastic circle that I had placed on the ground where the town drunk fell. And they said, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, that is difficult terrain that used to be the town drunk." Go check out rotting zombies in Draw Steel Monsters. When they die, their bodies become difficult terrain. I think that's awesome. Carry on. Does a little bit of damage to the ghost, who phases right through Titus, doing corruption damage, then turns around, rakes down his back using the ghost's heat death ability to do a ton of cold damage, and then I get a crit. Yay! There's no other PCs around. So he goes into Titus again. More heat death. Roll number 2. Also a crit. So more heat death. Titus drops and is dying. Or he would be, if the PCs had not shown up right at that time. Corinne sees Titus drop, reaches out, grabs a version of Titus that did not drop, and brings that version forward. That version took slightly less damage. Now that is what happened narratively. What happened mechanically is that the player of Corinne reminded Titus that he can spend 2 hero tokens to gain stamina equal to his recovery value before he gets hit, which is precisely what happens. Titus spends the hero tokens and is not dying, but is still in pretty bad shape. Definitely the PCs need to intervene. And intervene they do. Vanish runs by the zombie, seeing Marta's granddaughter sticking her head out of the shop, and he's like, "Get inside!" And he hits the zombie with the setup, which gives the zombie weakness to all attacks. Weakness 5. For the record, Marta's granddaughter, being Marta's granddaughter, does not listen to him, grabs a crossbow, and charges out into the street to shoot the zombie. She does 2 whole damage. Corinne hammers this thing with an entropic bolt, and then Marta charges in hard with a force redirect, a 2nd level null ability that she does not possess, because she has gained 2 victories since the last time she used her complication power. She charges into this thing, and basically, at this point in time, it had 2 stamina left. She did 14 damage to it before the setup. So 19 damage to this thing that had 2 stamina. She basically turned it into goo. She blew the body away, she blasted the ghost away, and it was sort of like that curtain fell, and then she looked past it to see her granddaughter pointing a crossbow bolt at where the zombie had been. And Marta says, "Girl, what have I told you about shooting a crossbow? Always from behind cover." And that is where we end this particular study in Effluence. Next time, we probably respite very briefly before we interrogate Sister Cavino. If you want some spoilers about her, check out my game prep videos, of which there will be another after this because I have more game to plan. But even in the last one, we talked about Sister Cavino, so good stuff. If this sounded cool to you and you want to play or run Draw Steel, there's going to be links in the doobly-doo to where you can get the game. If you like my storytelling or my setting, I write fantasy novels, and you can follow the links in the doobly-doo to my website, where you can read them for free or purchase them if you don't have patience. They come out 1 chapter a month, and we're almost done with the first book. So there you go. All right. See you next time.